looks like they're trying to do like a new change there. So old password. So yeah. Do you remember your old password?
Yeah, the one I just put in.
Okay, let's go ahead and put it in again. And then okay, then under new password, we'll make a new one.
Can I put in whatever I want?
Yeah. Looks like these don't match.
All right, let me redo them both.
Do you want me to go ahead and get started, or?
You can probably go ahead because there's nothing I have to vote on right away.
Good evening. Thank you again for your patience. We're going to go ahead and proceed and convene our regular meeting. May I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to reconvene public meeting.
Second.
Ms. Connect seconds. All in favor say aye. We'll do a voice vote. Aye. All in favor say nay. Motion passes. Or all opposed, thank you. Mr. Sandoval is not here with us today. He is on a personal affair. We are going to proceed and start with a moment of silence today for a student at Santa Fe Elementary School, 7th grade, who passed away, and then we're going to follow with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'll announce him in just a moment. So may I have everybody stand for the pledge, for a moment of silence? Thank you, and I would like to welcome Mr. Aaron Bristow from Cactus High School, who's a senior, who will lead us in the pledge.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 5.1, address agenda items and consider adoption or make any recommended changes. And board members, would you like to make any changes? Okay, proceeding with 6.1, staff recognitions. We're going to go ahead and have this led by our superintendent, Ms. Linda Pallas-Thompson.
Thank you, Mrs. Sejas Martinez. We have a few recognitions here. First, there's 72 members of the Stanzia Junior High Band who have the honor of performing in Washington, D.C. over the Veterans Day weekend, November 9th through the 12th. They're going to be participating in the Parade of Heroes commemorative, band on November 10th at the Lincoln Memorial to honor our veterans of World War II. And on November 11th, they're going to perform at Air Force Memorial. So Stanzia is currently the only band in Arizona that's had that privilege to partake. Very exciting. Cactus High School, their robotics team, the Cobra Commanders, will be competing in the Arizona First Robotics State Championship this Saturday, October 13th. This free event is being held in Tempe at the Wells Fargo Arena on the ASU main campus, and the event starts at 8. Going to conclude at 5 p.m. The Cobra Commanders would love your support as they work very hard to qualify for this event. So that should be a fun day. And then our Met Professional Academy students will be participating in the Makers of Change Assistive Technology Challenge. And in this challenge, this is pretty extraordinary. The students are going to have the opportunity to create solutions to improve the assistive technology equipment used by young children with disabilities served by the Southwest Human Development ADAPT shop. Students will present their solution on Saturday, October 13th at Phoenix Burton Bar Central Library, and we wish them the best of luck. So very exciting events with our students.
Thank you for sharing. I know we received the
Thank you.
email, governing board. And then to the public, if any of our students are interested in robotics, some of our elementary schools do have those clubs, so I encourage you to spark their interest to take those children to go see it. It's quite amazing what they can do.
Exciting.
Okay, and we'll proceed with board recognition, 6.2. Ms. Pangarelli?
Well, tonight I would like to recognize all of the bus drivers and all of the support staff. They do a fantastic job, and I just want to say thank you.
Ms. Connect?
I wanted to thank the Peoria United Parent Council and the League of Women Voters for hosting the board forum on October 2nd with the candidates for the upcoming election. It was weird not to be up there, but it was really good, and I think the candidates all did a really nice job. So congratulations to all of them. And then this week, it was a neat partnership. I said my worlds collided when I'm a member of the Peoria Chamber, and the Chamber held their monthly luncheon at Centennial High School and had an opportunity to show off our students, both the musicians there and, of course, our culinary arts student, and I think people were very impressed. And it's a good partnership with that chamber, and we know that they are going to extend the invitation to our upcoming field trip throughout their membership. So it was a good civically engaged day. Nice.
Ms. Stone? Okay. And I do have two. One highlighted, Ms. Pangarelli, Bus Safety Week is coming up, so we'll visit that in our calendar. Two events. One, I'm wearing a shirt, I Love Econ. I had the privilege of attending with three of our curriculum instruction specialists, Ms. Henninger, Ms. Nelson, and Ms. Munger. We attended the Financial Literacy Conference in Georgia, and there were some great sessions. Three that I want to highlight. One was for special ed. I'll provide the research. There are tons of free resources and opportunities for our special ed students to recognize practical money skills. Kent University has a great transition for our students in special ed, so those who are in our system and are interested in secondary education. There was another focus workshop that says Vote Voices on the Economy. Dr. Kramer, she's an instructor in Pima County. And this directly aligns, Ms. Pallas Thompson, to our strategic plan. We talked about having our civic engagement of students to be registered voters. This is a free resource that has our students educated on platforms, on ideologies of all politics, all the financial impact of those decisions as well. So here's another source. And then ultimately, the big takeaway was a session on dissertations and research projects. And essentially, they highlighted, and I have to say this, is standalone economics courses have no or little impact on students, which means traditionally we have seniors take an economics class, and when asked, what do you remember, they don't. The impact comes from when students receive content addressed in all subject matter, which means we need to incorporate financial literacy in English language arts, social studies, math, science. There's all these components, and if we want our students to be financially literate, we have to incorporate in all content areas. So I look forward in our strategic plan, serving every student every day with financial literacy concepts, and I will pass that on.
Please.
The other big takeaway or opportunity I had was attending Altaloma Booster Club. They were there till 8:30 at night, and this is what we might see at other schools, PTSO meetings, PTA meetings. They call themselves a booster club. That's been the tradition. What I really took two things away, their principal was there till 8 o'clock at night as well. They focused on a partnership with Peoria High School, creating and getting grants for a makerspace for their library, and the students are involved in those decisions. They are going to survey what they need in their library to meet their needs, and Peoria High School is going to be a part of that conversation and getting grants. What they did find out was the grants that they were looking at, and our wonderful grant writer, Miss Z's, she attended, she did a walkthrough as well, but they're going to need grants for furniture. There's no funding for furniture because generally those grants don't cover that. So any community members who can help out with Altaloma Furniture Library, they are welcoming that opportunity to serve their students and the partnership with Peoria High School. So kudos to that great relationship. So, all right. Anything else? We're all set. Moving on to 7.1, request address the governing board, not included in the agenda, and I do not have any green slips.
Nothing.
Okay. Number 8, consent agenda items. Would any governing board members like to pull any?
I would like to pull the minutes, 8.2.
And I would like to pull 8.15, request for proposal. Any other items? All right, we have a consent agenda item with 2 items pulled, 8.2 and 8.15. I need a motion, please.
I move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of items 8.2 and 8.15.
And a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you for your patience. Okay, does it read? All right, motion passes 4 and 1 absent. Moving on to 8.2, minutes of September 27th. Ms. Pingarelli?
Actually, I just wanted to have a correction put in. I was there at the meeting. When it says to return to regular session, it has absent Beverly Pingarelli. I actually arrived 10 minutes, I think, after it started, at timestamp at 50 minutes, 37 seconds, which I think was about, and I just wanted that to be put in, that I actually was there.
I move to approve the 8.2 minutes with the amendments.
Second. Actually, since you pulled it, you should make the motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve 8.2 with the correction that was stated.
Second? Okay, we'll do a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passes 4, and that's an aye for me as well. I always forget that. Moving on to 8.15, request for proposal, online library resource database. I was reviewing this information, and this is a resource that our students use. And according to the information, it says there was a committee that selected this resource, and there are 2 people listed on the committee. I would like, because students and teachers use this resource, I would like to have more people to be a part of the committee and actually determine if EBSCO hosts, I kept thinking Equifax, but I know that's finance. EBSCO hosts is really the library resource and database. I followed up with Ms. Linda Pellis Thompson, and she stated it's not time sensitive. So if I can have that process reevaluated and make sure that it's more than 2 people, is that correct, Ms. Myers?
Mrs. Eha Martinez, I'll follow up with our Director of Procurement, Laurie Staples, regarding your request. The procurement process, what was a valid process in the selection and recommendation brought forward, but if it's the pleasure of the board to have our procurement department reevaluate the process, we can certainly do that, and I'll follow up with Mrs. Staples.
So I recognize that there's a law that we follow in the procurement process, but when it says committee, who determines the committee?
It's in conjunction with our procurement department and the buyer who's over that commodity. So depending on the item that's being procured, you may have a large committee or a small committee. I can certainly have Mrs. Staples follow up in a Friday report to provide more clear background on this particular selection, as well as options moving forward to reopen the solicitation.
We're talking about just an online resource database? Could somebody explain exactly what that is?
So it's not just an online resource. And correct me if I'm wrong, when you're doing research, we send our students to use and research articles, things that assign when you're doing a homework assignment. There are many products out there that we could use, and I want to make sure it's teacher-friendly, I want to make sure it's student-friendly, the sites and the options available to our students to cite are the best, and basically that's what I understand it to be.
We did not recommend any changes to all of the resources that are currently available in our library media center. We needed to go through procurement because our current contract with our companies that provide all of these resources to our library centers needed to be updated. So we did not want to go through a complete library process, but we wanted to continue the resources that are currently there. So in working with procurement, we were certainly didn't want to take any of those resources away from our libraries. So there was not a committee per se on the curriculum side because we wanted to maintain the current resources that are existing right now.
So you're saying that this is a product that we have used and our students are familiar with it and our teachers are familiar with it?
That is correct.
But do we have any data that the students use it on a regular basis, that it supports the academic needs?
We
the
would have some
frequency?
usage data. What we have not had that is new to us this year is a little more dedicated time from a library parapro who is helping us get the word out to our other library parapros around the resources that are available in our libraries. To that end, that's also why we didn't want to pull any resources, because this is a year that we want to look at that usage data before we make decisions about what we may want to change there.
So essentially, we've had this product and we haven't used it to its full potential.
I'd have to get usage rates and give that data to you.
And before I commit, or the board should consider committing to a longer contract, we should determine if our students use it and if it's worth keeping, or if we look at something else.
I can get that data to you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Seas Martinez, you were also, I'm understanding, thinking that it's more than 2 people that should be part of a committee. Was that the thrust?
That is correct.
Also? Okay. Thank you.
So at this time, I would like to table 8.15, request for proposal, online library resource database. So I just need a second if we're going to table it.
I'll second that.
A motion by myself and a second by Ms. Pengarelli to table it. Hey, that one came up. Did it come up for you? I now see the red hand, so. We probably have to do a voice vote. Motion carries? Thank you. I don't see it. Okay, thank you. There we go. All right, moving on. 10.1, Threat Assessment Protocol. And Mr. Savoy.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you for having me this evening. We have a presentation for you this evening on threat management. I'll make sure I have access to see it. Threat management and our system in our school district. A threat assessment process in our district is part of a whole comprehensive plan on student safety and well-being. And it's somewhat difficult to take 15 minutes, perhaps 20 minutes, to provide all of the information necessary for the entire scope of what it is that we do in this arena, but we will certainly make every attempt to do that and then respond to any specific questions that you might have. I would like to add that I do have 3 experts with me tonight. If they would please stand when I introduce them, please. Dr. Marshall Walters, Khalil Day, and Laura Willis. Marshall is our coordinator for PTSS, which is the multi-tiered student support system that we're implementing a lot of our efforts around the safety and well-being strategic area. Laura is the school psychologist at Centennial, and Khalil is a school psychologist at Ira Murphy School. And Janine Fisher, who was unable to attend this evening due to prior commitments, is also a team member and our lead psychologist for the district. So when we talk about threat assessment management in our district, these are the folks who respond from a district perspective to bring resources and support to the school. And so I want to be sure that you know who they are. And again, if you have specific questions, I'm sure they'll help me out. 3 main areas I want to cover this evening. One is the purpose. Why do we use or have this as a tool in our district? Some definitions that I'd like to just share with the board I think will be helpful. And then I would like to walk through how we implement this at all of our schools in our district. The purpose of having a threat assessment process is that it's an inquiry base, meaning that we begin with questions, lots of questions, to initiate our process, and it's conducted by a team of people both at the site and the district. And this happens when we have a threat that's made, and we're trying to determine if this threat is credible. And so all of you know, we all hear about it in the newspapers and the media, and certainly in our district we have experiences where threats are made by a student or others against either another person or property within our district. And so we have a process to kind of vet out how serious is that.
And it could include threat against themselves as well, correct?
Madam President, that's a different process that we use. We do know that we have students who contemplate those actions, and we take a different approach with that. Not to say that it does not come up in the conversation, but it might lead the team in a different direction.
Okay, thank you.
But this is specifically designed for a threat against other people or physical property destruction. And this pretty much defines what I've just been talking about. What is a threat? And it's important that we have to define that because we want to be clear in when we implement this process. So here's really kind of the big piece of all of this. One of the things that happens is when a threat is received by a school, could be received by the district, it could be received by another neighbor in the community who comes to the school and lets us know, but someone, relays to us that there's been a threat made. One of the most difficult initial pieces that happens is, like in any instance, when a student may have a mismanagement problem at school on a particular day, our administrators are trained in providing due process to every student. And what that means is, just because you receive a threat doesn't really mean that that might be true. So you have to have an opportunity to talk to that student, understand, dig a little bit deeper, find out what's really going on and what's happened. So that's one part. First, to just ascertain, is this the student that's linked to the threat? And then the part that principals work through is determining whether the threat is a transient threat or a substantive threat. A transient threat is one that a student might make, and as you begin your investigation, you realize this student made a mistake, poor choice of words, poor action, but has no intention of creating any harm or manifesting that this is going to become real. On the other hand, and actually those make up about 60 to 75% of all threats that come in, is that it's transient. It's not going to manifest into a dangerous situation for our school. A substantive threat, on the other hand, certainly suggests that there is intention and potential of this being carried out. And that's when we move further down the road in the implementation of our threat assessment. The way that this happens, and I don't have all those documents to present, but I did share them, I believe, for the board to take a look at those and have access. The initial referral form, the first few pages of our threat management protocol, is a guide that our principals work themselves through to make this determination. So they're relying on evidence-based questions and indicators of a threat, whether it be actual or not. So here's the implementation. How does this work? So this occurs at the site level. Principal is at a situation where, I think this is serious business. Not really sure. What we direct all of our principals do is contact your executive director. They have a worksheet that they work through, the executive director, the principal, there might be other people involved, and they discuss the student and they address all of the specific indicators. And again, I've provided that protocol to you that you may want to look at. If they decide that this is a substantive threat, then we move toward making a recommendation that the threat assessment team is mobilized, and we then make a visit to the school. When at the school, the people who are involved now is we have a site team. I introduced you to 3 of our members, psychologists, behavior interventionists, folks that are skilled in this. And then we include the psychologists, administration at the site, as well as teachers, the nurse, anyone who may have knowledge of this student. Could be a coach, could be a classroom assistant in the classroom that knows the student very well. A lot of times students identify with a person, they make a connection with someone on the staff that may not be their teacher, but that person would be very critical to hear information about that student. This happens at the site level, and it usually takes a few days. So you have a student, he or she's made a threat, and we have both male and female that we have experience with making threats. We provide a quiet, secluded area at the campus for the team to work. Once the team shows up on the campus, they're the ones who are doing all of the work primarily. And there's a set of questionnaires that they go through with the student, with parents, with witnesses, and other people involved. But it does take a few days, and that's sometimes the frustration we hear back from the schools. We want an answer right now when we say, look, let the process unfold, let it take its course, and we'll have a more robust picture of the situation that we're working with.
Mr. Savoy?
Yes.
I got to believe that there could be an instance where urgency was a factor, that we wouldn't have 2 or 3 days to implement a plan. Would that not be the case?
Madam President, Mrs. Connect, you're absolutely correct. Again, I'm trying to give this broad view, but you're absolutely correct. I can share with you a couple of instances where the police department have contacted us. And because they became aware of the threat. Someone in the community notified the police department. Sometimes we have the situation in school, we call the police right away. Students have been taken into custody right at that point because the determination is that it's a substantial threat right away. And so it's not that the process would be excused. If that student were to seek re-entry into our school system, we would more than likely engage in this process to dig deep into finding out about the mental health history of that student. But to answer your question succinctly, yes, there are instances that have happened immediately, without hesitation, unfortunately.
Mr. Savoy?
Yes, Mrs. Doan.
On the previous slide where you're talking about the people that are, if you will, involved or interviewed or whatever, does that include other students?
Madam President, Mrs. Doan, it can.
Okay.
Absolutely, yes. And most usually does. The how. Let's see. The other thing that happens through the process is that we complete a full records review. So meaning, we like to look at the entire picture of the student. So if it's an 8th grade student, let's say, or high school student, we're going to look at the entire educational record from kindergarten all the way to that current day and time. We'll be looking at report cards, we'll be looking at attendance records, we'll be looking at counselor logs that are kept in our database, we'll be looking at discipline records. We look at the entire picture. We'll review to see if the student was ever assessed for gifted education, were they ever assessed for a 504 intervention plan, have they had prior experience with an individual education plan, an IEP. So we want to look and see the entire picture of the student, and that takes some time, but it's very, very important. At the conclusion of the full assessment, which will include the parents, the student, other students, there will be recommendations made, summary recommendations. Because what happens a lot of times is you have the student who perpetuated the threat, and so there is a plan for that student, but you also have victims, and we develop plans to support those students. We also create a safety plan for on campus, because in some instances, the student will reintegrate into the system. Because it's not at the level that took that immediate action where the person was arrested, now is in the judicial system and waiting for adjudication from the courts. All of our training in this area is we don't want to throw away students. I don't mean to sound like that, but our effort is always trying to find out what's the root cause and how can we help. I can tell you in a couple of instances, because of the work of our team, there is no doubt in my mind we saved a couple of young people by working with their family and accessing mental health services in an inpatient situation right away as a result of the work that the team did in evaluating the students, saying, you know, there's some very, very serious mental health issues here, and through the parents and their insurance, we were able to have that student work toward getting healthy. So we have some situations like that too. And then those are the plans that I mentioned. Interestingly enough, when we first began this process, which was in 2013, we had a 2-day training for all of our administrators. We did this in response to the increase in school violence threats that were happening. But it's evolved over time, not only to still dealing with that, but we find that the process is a very systemic way of helping students and schools, because some of these are very, very challenging. The other thing that we have to consider is that when these threats occur, the community around the school is most likely fully aware of what that threat is. They certainly have a lot of concerns too. We want the community to rely on our best practice and the work that we're doing to ensure safety for all. And then lastly, I really just wanted to share some data with you. These are the number of threats that have occurred that we have documented, initiated, and followed through with a full assessment since 2013. So it's not something that happens every day. It's not something that happens regularly. But, at the same time, that's a significant number that we have a situation where people are making a serious threat. The other interesting thing about the data, you can't see it on this chart, but when I work with the team, these things always seem to happen in clumps. So for instance, you look at October 2018, from the beginning of the year to today, 5 times the team has had to activate. 4 of those times happened within 2 weeks. And I don't know why that happens, but if you look at every year, that pattern is almost consistent, that they happen in clusters of 4 or 5 at one time. Just a couple other comments I'll make. We work very, very closely with our police departments. They're fully aware of these threats, and they have a no-nonsense approach. I have seen more students taken into custody in the last couple years, particularly after Parkland, Florida. The message they have from their chief and from their, I believe, their city government is there's no tolerance. And we've had a lot of kids taken into custody by making that threat. And then later, as it goes through the courts, I'm sure it gets adjudicated differently, perhaps, or maybe not. So I stand for any questions you may have. I tried to do that in 15, 20 minutes. It's a lot of information, and I just wanted to share with the board, it's another tool in our comprehensive efforts towards safety and well-being.
Thank you, Mr. Savoy.
You're
We'll go
welcome.
ahead and start with Ms. Doan.
I do have a question. Do we have a breakdown which schools does this happen in? Is it more prevalent in some areas than others? How does that?
Madam President, Mrs. Doan, interestingly enough, it covers the entire district.
Right.
There is no particular indicator that says this school may have more than another. It's really equal distribution. The other thing I will say is the success of this is people willing to speak up when they hear or see something that doesn't seem right. And parents will call and say, hey, this doesn't seem right. Or students will talk to a teacher. That's usually the best way this system works. But it covers the whole spectrum.
And I'm going to assume that we have more incidences in high schools than in elementary schools?
Madam President, Mrs. Doan, I actually think the number is a little more with the elementary.
Okay.
It's actually with elementary schools. I know that seems hard to believe. Well, maybe not. But it is with the younger students because, I don't want to indicate why I think it might happen, but it does happen more at the elementary school.
That's
our
very
track
strange.
record.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Pingrelli.
I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Savoy. It was very informative, and I just wanted to thank the 3 ladies for coming to answer questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Ms. Connect.
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Savoy.
You're welcome.
I do.
Okay.
And it's more just because I know we're in the process, and Dr. Walters, I've had the opportunity to meet you, so thank you, and the rest of the ladies joining us this evening. My questions, and they don't have to be answered now, the form, how often is this form reviewed? If it's a referral form, what guidelines? Are you guys using state standards, mental health standards, federal policy standards, this form to refer a student? Because what I'm thinking is once a child's name goes on a document with a threat assessment, what are the implications of this form?
Madam President, great question. So there's about 3 questions in there. Let me
Yes.
see if I can parse those out.
And you could generalize,
That's
because I
okay.
know we're at the beginning of the strategic plan process,
Right.
and
Well, the first question is, initially in 2013, when we adopted the program, we brought 2 outside trainers in who had extensive certification, really at a national level. Research-based process, we had all the bells and whistles, we went through all of that. What we found was over time was that it became a little bit cumbersome, the process. Not cumbersome, but it wasn't real clearly delineated, and it was difficult for our schools to use. So this past summer, once again, all lined up to our initiative on safety and well-being, not only do we attack the emergency operations plan, we said, you know what, let's take a look at threat assessment. So really, Dr. Walters, Khalil, Laura, Janine, and others in the behavioral health area, really, they redid the whole packet, and we've made it easier, more of a checklist type thing to initially get it going that our principals can use, much more user-friendly. So it's all new forms, the same information, because we know that's the information we need to identify. Now, you bring up a good question. So what happens with these forms? When we do the initial review, when we're trying to determine is the threat substantive or is it transient, it's just 3 pages. Those pages are highly confidential. Every school has a locked file cabinet on their campus where we keep our bullying, intimidation, harassment forms. We're required by law to keep those for 6 years. So any student that fills out an incident report in those areas, we keep that on file. So what we've asked our schools to do is also place that form in that file. So it doesn't go into their CUME record, but it is in a locked cabinet, and the access is limited to only those who need to know. If a full evaluation is completed, the entire packet, that information is also kept in that same area. I will say that any time of an assessment is completed, the last page of the packet says a threat assessment has been completed on this student with a date. We do put that in the CUME file. Again, that's a student record, only access to people who have a need to know, and certainly it's available to parents on their own children. But we do that because what the team has reported is that we've had some students who have made threats 1 year and then maybe another year later, and they weren't really deemed serious business, but if you see a pattern, then your concern goes up. And so that's why we do keep those records, but we keep them at that school level.
So you bring up some good points. I'm glad you brought up the parents. Parents have access to them at any point, is that correct?
Absolutely. They have access to their child's
Own
educational
records.
record. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
The other thing you mentioned is if we are documenting our students that exhibit these behaviors, are we coming up with a plan to support these students being proactive, to try to intervene and provide behavior health supports, or does it just go in a file and we just hope that they don't do it again?
Madam President, you're looking at our leader of that task force, Dr. Marshall Walters. That is a prong of our effort in safety and well-being. Remember, we had the preparedness and then intervention and prevention. So we know that we need to do more to provide those supports for those students. And Michelle could share more of that if you'd like.
At this point, I know I'm just
Yep.
trying to wrap my mind around, and so this is a great introduction to start leading into that. And if you're working on it, I'm trusting we're going to hear an update as we've been hearing, so we appreciate you bringing that to the board. The last one I would like to just address as once a child, well, 2 things. Once a child gets identified as a threat, it's obviously a violation of policy, making sure that I would like the team to come to the board and bring recommendations, or I was reviewing our policies. Anybody can make a recommendation that we review a policy to make sure it's in line with the best interests of our children, mental health services, and that we're not doing corporal disciplinary action, and that is truly in the best interest of the child. And while we're going through this process, we look at that. And last comment. Looking at the data trends, they have gone up since 2015, 2016, 2017, year over year for the past 3 years. And you've identified that it's the same trend. Generally, by October, you have these high instances. What are we doing if we're having a 3-year row? It's now considered a trend. What are we doing to prevent those in the beginning of the school year?
Madam President, I certainly don't want to imply that every year that these indicators all happen by October.
Okay.
I'm only sharing the 2018 October because I collected the data from August when we started this year till now. The trend would say that if we maintain and do not decrease this growth, we could have another 8 to 9 incidences before the year is out, if we were to follow that same pattern. Last year, the amount of resources expended and applied to intervening on behalf of all these things, it was almost an oddity. I mean, it seemed like it was, the numbers show, it was very busy. It was about 1.5 incidences per month on average. It was a lot. And the police shared the same with us as well, because they're fully engaged when these things happen. It goes back to the work that we're doing with intervention and prevention that we want to be able to bring to the board here, hopefully by mid-year, a pretty concise plan of the direction that we're going to provide those resources for kids. We believe that when we do some significant things, provide our teachers with the right tools to help kids better advocate for themselves, be able to cope, be able to make good decisions, learn some good skills in the interpersonal way, that it will make a difference. Social media, copycats, it's rampant. But on the other hand, it's what helps us solve a lot of cases too.
Well, thank you, all of you, for your efforts. As we continue to go forward, I would be nice to see these numbers continue to go down and that our children's needs are being met, so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Savoy. Moving on to the next one. 10.2, Ms. Danielle Airy, discussion and ratification of the 2019-2020 Peoria Unified School District Calendar.
Good evening, President Ceja Martinez, members of the board, Mrs. Pallas Thompson. Typically about this time every year, I stand before you and present to you the calendar for the year that is soon to be. So for next year, as you know, and per policy, we do have a calendar committee that meets and proposes calendars in a 3-year cycle for us. Part of our policy also says that by November, the board will see the calendar yet again, and you have an opportunity to then ratify it so that our team can begin all of the work for the next school year. We set a number of other calendars off of receiving your ratification for the upcoming school year. So I am presenting to you tonight the 2019-20 calendar. You would typically see this calendar as a consent agenda item. However, I'm bringing it forward to you with a proposed change. The change that you'll see on there is adding one additional day for parent-teacher conferences, both in October as well as, let me scroll down here, in the spring, in February, so that those in the audience and joining us online can see the calendar in its entirety. So I do want to bring this forward to you tonight and present it for your ratification with that one addition, one additional day earmarked for parent-teacher conferences. This is based on feedback we received from our staff, our parents, so everyone giving us the feedback that 2 days is the way to go. So I stand before you with any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Aries, and I want to highlight again, because of the feedback we've received, we are listening and we are following through and giving you those 2 extra days. So thank you again for readdressing this. Governing Board, are there any comments? Okay, so then this is a voting item. I need a motion, please.
I move to approve the 2019-20 calendar as presented.
I second that. We have a motion by Ms. Connect and a second by myself to approve the school calendar as presented. Thank you very much. I believe it passed. There we go. Now I can see them. 4-0. Yeah, now. Thank you so very much, Ms. Airy. Moving on, 10.3, for discussion and consideration on voting on the bylaw change proposal and one core belief addition from the Arizona School Boards Association. So we went to the Maricopa School Boards Association meeting, and there are two proposals that were discussed. The first one is Proposal A, with an endorsement from ASBA Board of Directors and ASB Governance Committee. The ASBA Equity Committee proposes that the additional statement on equity should be added to the ASBA core belief statement. The addition statement will enhance ASBA's core beliefs regarding educational equity for every student. Any questions, comments?
Where's the statement?
Where's the statement?
It's on proposal. There's,
I want to know what it says.
Statement's not in.
no, it's not. I don't have the attachment either. I only read it because I went to the meeting.
We don't have anything.
Yeah. I don't have a background item.
Do you have it, Michelle? You can read it to us?
What came through was to the ASBA regarding educational equity.
We don't have the statement.
No, that was only.
I'm not going to vote to approve a statement I can't read.
That was the information they
Not going to, no.
For Proposal B, ASBA Governance Committee recommends that a bylaw may be amended or repealed by a majority affirmative vote of all member boards. Currently, a minimum of 2/3, which is 66% of all ASBA board members, must vote in affirmative to amend or repeal a bylaw. Now, as a delegate, I had the opportunity to attend last time. The problem is, and again, I do recall this conversation in attending, is at ASBA meetings, when you're a delegate, you have an opportunity to vote on items with 200-plus members. Is it 213, Ms. Connect? 200
School districts?
Yes.
Well, there are about 224 districts, but about half of that show up at the delegate
Yes.
assembly.
Correct, and if you're an ASBA member and then you go and send your representative, less than half of the ASBA delegates show up, and you, even if everybody voted, you wouldn't be able to amend or repeal a bylaw because the attendance is not there.
Well, and actually, now we have electronic voting, but we have too
Right.
few school districts participating. We usually do.
We go.
But statewide, we have difficulty. So what this is saying is this is lowering the threshold of participation, because if we don't, and we continue to have the low level of participation, then ASBA is really paralyzed, can't move forward. So I think this is a good way to do it. However, this still has to pass by the higher threshold to lower the threshold, if that makes sense, because that's in the bylaws.
So for myself and my experience, for Proposal B, I would like to pass it and make the recommendation because you can't make any changes at the ASBA.
I agree.
Proposal A, you've decided what?
I move to approve Proposal B.
I'll second that.
Proposal A.
I did.
What's the deadline for our response on this?
So we can throw it in the consent agenda item for the next one, or does that?
When is our next meeting?
October 25th?
Oh, yeah, we can do it next meeting.
Okay.
It's something like we'll make equity an overarching core value. It's a core value statement, but we need to get the verbiage. Oh, you're waiting for me, sorry.
Thank you. Motion passes. All right, going forward, 10.4, discussion and consideration 2017-2018 annual financial reports. Ms. Myers, I hear it's a long one tonight.
It may be. Well, good evening, President Cehar Martinez, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Pals Thompson. Thank you for the opportunity to bring forward the annual financial report for fiscal 2018 for the Peoria Unified School District. Tonight's presentation will include an overview of what an annual financial report, or AFR, is, and related annual reporting requirements. I will also highlight maintenance and operations, capital, and classroom site fund expenditures and carry forward amounts. There will also be expenditures for grants and select cash-controlled funds, as well as a summary of expenses by function and where our community can review current and past AFRs, budgets, and audited financial statements. One of our four perspectives of the district's strategic plan is stewardship of community resources. The AFR is a part of this strategic perspective to solidify and adhere to effective policies, practices, and accountability for district resources. The annual financial report includes budget and actual summary information for revenues, expenditures, and fund balances for all district funds, and is required by Arizona Revised Statute 15904 to be approved by the Governing Board by October 15th each year. The report is compiled in accordance with Arizona Revised Statutes, guidance from the Auditor General's Office, and the Arizona Department of Education. The publication of the AFR is truly a team effort, and I'd like to acknowledge all of the dedicated staff in the Business Services Department, but in particular 4 individuals who were instrumental in the closeout of fiscal 18 as well as the compiling of our annual financial report. 3 of those team members are with us tonight, but I'd like to first off start with a thank you for Linda Virgil, who is our Director of Accounting. She's here this evening and is instrumental to all of our month-end and annual year-end close activities, as well as Lori Rotenberger, who is our Grant and Finance Manager, Michael Vaughn, CPA, who is our Internal Auditor, and Veronica Fabella, who is a very dedicated budget analyst in the Business Services Department, and I want to thank them for their assistance with this year's AFR. Also, the AFR is reviewed as part of our annual financial audit, which is currently underway for fiscal 2018. Each year in July, Peoria Unified adopts an annual expenditure budget for the fiscal year that includes budget amounts for maintenance and operation expenditures. This fund is where most of the day-to-day operations for the district are accounted for and includes salaries, employee benefits, supplies, utilities, and other operational expenditures that are not in capital, or rather not of a capital nature. This fund is divided into multiple programs that include regular education, special education, pupil transportation, as well as a K-3 reading program. For reporting and accounting purposes, each of the programs is further divided by function, including instruction, support services, and operation of non-instructional services. The total M&O expenditures cannot exceed the adopted budget limits. In fiscal 2018, 86% of the M&O expenditures were for salaries and benefits, and the total expenditures in the M&O fund were $210,046,423 for the year. It is also important to note that $24.2 million of the M&O expenditures is supported by the district's M&O override. The fiscal 2018 annual financial report is a review of the most recent fiscal year and is a financial representation of student learning, employees working, and teachers and staff providing services throughout the school year. The Peoria Unified School District is the largest employer in the city of Peoria and the fourth largest school district in the state of Arizona. For fiscal 2018, M&O expenditures supported educating more than 37,000 students at 41 schools. The district employed more than 3,900 full-time equivalent staff members, including 1,500 classified staff representing bus drivers, food service workers, warehouse maintenance, and administrative support staff. Bus drivers transported our students approximately 2.5 million miles, and food service workers served approximately 4.5 million meals during the year.
I have a quick question. You mentioned the override. When was the last one we went out for the community, and when does it expire?
President Ceja Martinez, we last went out to the community in the fall of 2015. An override is for 7 years, and so next fiscal year will be the first opportunity to renew that override. If it's not renewed either in fiscal 20 or fiscal 21, it would begin to wind down and expire the next 2 years. So it is for a set period of time.
Thank you.
Capital funds are different than M&O and include district additional assistance, also known as unrestricted capital, building renewal, adjacent ways, and the bond building fund. Unrestricted capital expenditures include furniture, athletic equipment, textbooks, instructional aids, computers, and software. Unrestricted capital expenditures in fiscal 2018 totaled just over $4 million. Building renewal funds consist of monies requested from the School Facilities Board to maintain the adequacy of school facilities. And in fiscal 2018, $70,000 of funding was expended on fire alarms and a roofing project. The Adjacent Ways Fund is used to account for special property tax assessments used for constructing and maintaining or improving ingress and egress access adjacent to district properties. In fiscal 2018, the district expended just over $8,000 from this fund. The bond building fund is used to account for proceeds from district bond sales that are expended for school and building renovations, pupil transportation vehicles, technology, and other eligible capital expenditures as approved in the bond authorization by the voters. Fiscal 2018 bond expenditures totaled $20,700,000 for the year. On October 25th, our next board meeting, the district will provide the annual bond and M&O override report to our community, and bond expenditures will be reviewed in more detail at that time. The Classroom Site Fund, or Prop 301, as prescribed by Arizona Revised Statute 15977, was established in 2002 to account for the portion of sales tax collections and state trust land income provided to school districts to support certified teacher salary increases. Classroom Site Fund expenditures are accounted for in three funds that pay for performance pay for certified staff and guidance counselors, as well as base pay. Total Classroom Site Fund expenditures in fiscal 2018 totaled $16.5 million. School districts may carry forward maintenance and operations, unrestricted capital, and Classroom Site Fund budget balances at year-end. The June 30th, 2018 M&O and capital combined carry forward for the district was 3% of the combined budget balances for those two funds. The carry-forward balance in M&O includes unexpended salary expenses for unfilled budgeted positions in the prior year and energy, water, equipment, utility cost savings transfers that will take place in fiscal 2019 for related equipment capital lease payments. Included in the unrestricted capital amount for the carry-forward is also budget capacity for the purchase of a phonics program in fiscal 2019. The Classroom Site Fund carry-forward is 9% of the 2018 budget amount and will be utilized in fiscal year 2019 for certified staff base pay and performance pay expenses. Another category of funds for operating and capital expenses is special projects. These are federal and state grants that are used for supplemental educational programs, Title I, Title II, IDEA, E-rate, and Medicaid in public schools. Guidelines for accounting and reporting for these funds are set forth by the Auditor General's Office, Arizona Department of Education, and Federal Uniform Grant Guidance. Federal and state grant expenditures in fiscal 2018 totaled $14.9 million. Included in the state grant fund, carry forward balance, Included in the state grant fund balance is a carry forward of $39,000 for the college credit exam incentive payments that we received, as well as $216,000 of results-based funding payments that were received in fiscal 2018 and that will be expended in fiscal 2019. Also included in the AFR are cash-controlled funds. A cash-controlled fund has budget capacity each year that consists of the beginning fund balance and revenue that is earned during that year. So in the graph, you'll see the blue bar is the combination of the beginning fund balance plus revenue in fiscal 2018. Auxiliary funds relate primarily to bookstore operations and the payment of student fees and class fees, parking fees, field trips, extracurricular and athletic activities. Auxiliary expenditures in the fund totaled $2.8 million for the year. The Civic Center Fund accounts for the rental of school facilities after school and on the weekends to third parties. The expenditures in this fund totaled $770,000 for the year. The indirect cost fund is used to account for monies that are transferred from federal projects, including the Food Service Fund, for administrative costs that cannot easily be budgeted or accounted for at a line item level. The concept is similar to an overhead amount and is charged with an indirect cost rate that is approved by the Arizona Department of Education. Attached to this agenda item is the Food Service Annual Financial Report, or AFR. The indirect cost for this fund was $1,032,896. The food services beginning fund balance and revenues were $15 million and expenses $13.8 million, including the allowable indirect cost.
You want us to wait, or?
No, I would say just jump in.
So MIPS is healthcare?
Thank you, Mrs. Connect. I'm about to
Oh.
speak about that. That's Medicaid in
Yes.
public schools. And in fact, I just covered our federal programs on the last slide, and on that slide was our Medicaids in public schools, which is reported as part of the special projects and grants. I'm highlighting it on this slide in part because it has a cash-controlled aspect to it. The fund is used to account for monies that the Peoria Unified School District receives from participating in the Medicaid in Public Schools program, and it's eligible reimbursements that we receive for services that we provide to our students, including speech and language and occupational therapy services, nursing, and other special education-related services. So by participating in the program, we are eligible for reimbursements each year for the services that we provide, and those reimbursements are what is accounted for in the Medicaid in Public Schools Fund. The reimbursements can be used for district M&O eligible expenditures, an example of which our budget committee last year approved to use that fund to pay for our classified staff members' retention stipend for the year. However, the fund is not a guaranteed funding source. Mm-hmm. The program may continue, it may not. So year by year, we enjoy receiving the reimbursements, but it's not a guarantee. And so because of that, you can't use that fund, say, for base salary increases. But we do have it available for M&O eligible expenses, and we do use it with input from our budget committee. And lastly, the tax credit fund is used to account for revenues and expenditures of monies collected in support of extracurricular activities, character education activities, standardized test fees, CPR prep classes, and CTE assessments. Contributions to this fund may be taken as a dollar-for-dollar tax liability reduction by the taxpayer, in accordance with Arizona Revised Statute 43-1089.01. Amounts in this fund should be expended on the activities for which the tax credit was collected. During fiscal 18, $1.5 million in tax credit revenue was received by the district, and we had $1.3 million of associated expenses.
I do have a question on this one. I appreciate the easy visual on the eyes. This is 2018, and when I think about our budgets and cash flows, I would like to see at some point some trend data, 2017, 2018, so that we have an opportunity to look at our controllable and uncontrollable expenses. And if there's a way as a district we can be more efficient and do some tail ends, I know that we have opportunities, or the opportunities to be, because of the laws that we have and the restrictions, to be more efficient, and the administrative costs to do that, be compliant, are challenging, but looking at what can we do going forward, and having a side-by-side comparison so that we can have more dollars to go into those other buckets.
Excuse me.
As President Ceja Martinez, I can share that our accounting team and budget analysts are actually doing multi-year trend analysis right now. That's something that we're very focused on as we prepare to go into next year's budget season.
Music to my
that
ears.
is underway. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll have a whole study session for that.
And moving along, speaking of multi-year comparisons and trend analysis, Arizona public school districts are required to use a consistent chart of accounts detailed in the Uniform System of Financial Records, which you've heard me refer to over time as the USFR. Some people say you suffer. We say you support fabulous reporting. With that, this publication is the joint responsibility of the Arizona Auditor General's Office and the Arizona Department of Education. This document interprets Arizona Revised Statutes Title 15 and contains the guidelines and requirements that Arizona's school districts must follow and comply with, and governs how our funds can be used and how we account for our funds within our financial system. The function within the account code structure describes the activity for which the service or material is acquired or expended. Over the last 3 years, classroom instruction and instruction support services, related expenses, and M&O, capital, and classroom site fund have been consistent related to administration, plant, and transportation costs, with an average of 73% of expenditures being made for instruction-related activities, 16% for plant operations and student transportation, and approximately 11% of expenditures being made for administrative activities district-wide.
Can you just clarify what consistent means?
President Ceja Martinez, looking at the percentages in the slide over the last 3 years, they're a consistent percentage. You don't see a lot of variability or movement in those 3 years.
Is that because we've obtained the same amount of revenues, we've been efficient, we've had, what contributes to what's consistent? The decisions that we're making, no pay increases, what does that mean?
President Ceja Martinez, it's a combination of factors during our budget process. When we do receive, say, inflation funding, we're very careful to ensure that what is allocated from a compensation perspective is in alignment with our other fixed and variable costs. We are very mindful to expend every dollar possible in the classroom and for instruction and student support. That's our focus. We also every year do our very best to keep our administrative costs to a minimum. For an organization of this size, our administrative costs are actually very lean from a percentage perspective compared to other organizations of this size.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Peoria Unified School District has published the district's budget, annual financial report, and audited financial statements on our website going back to 2010 through the current fiscal year, and our public and community can view those on our website at the following link. This concludes the fiscal 2018 annual financial report presentation. Administration recommends that the governing board approve the fiscal 2018 annual financial report. And at this time, I'm available to answer your questions.
Ms. Stone, any questions? Ms. Pingrelli?
No questions, but I just wanted to thank you and your team for all the hard work Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Connect?
Thank you. Just something I think is brief. On the carry forward, that is one of the characteristics that is evaluated by the Auditor General every year, right? Don't they? That's one of the factors that they look at in the strength of our organization.
Mrs. Connect, thank you for that question. Each year, the Auditor General's office does report and publish a Dollars in the Classroom report, and we do have a link to our most recent 2017 Dollars in the Classroom report on our website. And carry forward amounts are one factor for evaluating financial stress.
Right.
Another lens that people use when they look at carry forward is also bond ratings. I can share in recent years we have had an uptick in that carry forward, and it's a balance trying to provide every dollar that you can in salary increases and other expenditure needs where you also have an appropriate carry forward from a reserve perspective, from a financial stress perspective.
And aren't we actually limited to the amount that we can carry forward? Is it 4%?
Thank you, Mrs. Connect. It used to be that limit has been lifted.
Oh, okay, very good.
So what's the new limit?
There is not one.
So it's using your wisdom and experience to make sure that we have enough for a contingency plan for the future while still putting in the money that we need this year. So I think it's a healthy number this year, and I'm glad to see that stress number will be lifted.
And Mrs. Connect, thank you for highlighting that the carry forward also is used as a contingency. We do have current year funding. And so with that, funds like the Medicaid and Public Schools Fund and carry forward amounts is what would allow a school district to make it through a fiscal year if for some reason there was a change in student enrollment, and with current year funding there was a reduction in funds received.
Okay, very good, thank you.
I would like to thank everybody as well, your team, for keeping the lights on and providing all the services to our students and staff. You've highlighted a great point that a 4% cap has been removed, which makes it so much more important that we have the right staff, that Peoria Unified invests in certified CPA accountants and staff that can do a job to balance that, because those rating scores do impact our ability to borrow money, to do bonds, and to get credit, a line of credit for future projects. So thank you, and please let us know how we can continue to support, and we value everything you do.
Well, thank you, and thank you again to the team.
Thank you. And now we need a motion.
Move that we approve the financial report for fiscal year 2017 to 2018.
I will second.
We have a motion by Ms. Stone and a second by Ms. Pangarelli to approve the annual financial reports as presented. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving forward, 10.5, first reading of Arizona School Boards Association Policy Advisory Revision to Current Policy, i.e. Organization of Instruction. First read.
Good evening. Thank you for having us this evening for first read of the policies for our instructional program. So we had a comprehensive team that looked at this. A few of those people are here tonight. Should you have some questions, we'll be happy to take those as well. Policy IE, Organization of Instruction. Policy Advisory Number 592 outlined that House Bill 2248 established that joint technical education districts may offer vocational education programs beyond secondary education. Policy IE, Organization of Instruction, has been adjusted to reflect language in ARS 15-782. Adjusted policy language is for JTEDs that offer direct instruction through JTED-specific programs.
That's fine with me, but why does the heading at the top say instructional program high school, and then the 3 bullets are elementary, middle, and high school?
Oh. I'll make that change. Thank you.
The content is fine.
Any other questions? None.
Policy IHAMC, Senate Bill 1137, amended 15-718 and 43-1089 related to school curricula. The substance of this legislation directs school districts and charter schools to offer instruction and training in cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR, as a mandatory and not discretionary duty. CPR instruction and training is required to be provided no later than July 1st, 2019. We started this particular activity with our 9th grade high school students this last year. Once students complete the CPR training, they do receive a certificate. A new document, IHAMC, has been created for this required instruction. It's important to note that this policy was previously titled HIV and AIDS Education. This code and title was eliminated as the contents were revised and placed in other codes. Cross-references to the older code have been removed from the model, and this particular policy is now IHAMC, Instruction and Training in CPR.
Ms. Doan, any comments? Comments? Ms. Connect, Ms. Pingerelli?
Did this mandate come with any funding?
It did not.
Thank you for highlighting that, Ms. Connect. This is another state mandate, unfunded. That is a great policy, however unfunded. I will like to highlight that during opportunities we talk to community members, there are a lot of free resources out there. I will encourage you to continue to leverage our community who are trained, who can offer free training. They're out there, I've heard them. So unfortunately, it's unfunded, but we're proceeding with first read. Okay, moving on, 10.7. Oh, Ms. Pingerelli?
How much this is going to cost the district?
We did this with partnerships outside of our school district, so we had various fire departments and organizations, Red Cross, come in and support this particular effort. So we'll be continuing to work with our community members in supporting this effort.
It's not a lengthy program, just a few hours. So
No. It's important.
It
Time
is.
is not free,
It is.
but we appreciate the partnerships and how important that this is one community, and supporting Peoria Unified comes in many ways. So thank you for that. 10.7, and I'll go ahead and read it out. It's been a long day. First reading, Arizona School Boards Association Policy Advisory Revision and Current Policy IHB, Special Instructional Programs.
Thank you. On October 23rd, the 2017, the Arizona School Board of Education adopted rules in the area of special education, policy IHB, along with the regulation and exhibit that will be adjusted in the future, will conform to the work of the state board. Some of the language includes some wording that you'll see in this particular policy, and a stipulation associated with discipline for special education students.
Ms. Doan, any questions?
I'm still reading.
I'll come back. Ms. Pingerelli? Ms. Connect?
Can I ask a question about the last one?
We can go back at the end of the board meeting to readdress items.
Just have another question.
I'll make note, Ms. Connect. At this time, I don't, Ms. Doan, you need a few more minutes?
No, I'm okay.
To be clear, this is to be compliant as recommended by the state.
That's correct.
I had some concerns, but really it's the state law, so I look forward to our efforts to support our students' mental health and social well-being. Okay, at this time, did you want us to come back, Ms. Doan?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, perfect. Moving on, 10.8, first reading, Arizona School Boards Association Policy Advisory Revision to current policy IJJ, textbook and supplementary materials selection and adoption.
Senate Bill 1204 makes adjustment to ARS 15-102 and 15-722 related to high school textbooks. Language adjustments have been made to policy IJJ, textbook and supplementary material selection and adoption, and policy KB, parental involvement in education. The adjustment in the policy pertains to the display of high school textbooks for a 60-day period and the posting of related information on the district website. Posting on the website is contingent on a district maintaining a website associated with supplementary curriculum and curriculum adoptions. These adjustments are for unified districts and high school districts.
For this one, I'll start. It says textbooks, but we have electronic resources.
Our electronic resources are online. The list of those is online. This has to do with prior to adoption of new textbooks, that it is on display at the district office for a period of 60 days.
That's been our practice.
That's correct.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. All right, moving on. 10.9, first reading, Arizona School Boards Association Policy Advisory Revision to current policy IJNDB, use of technology resources in instruction, electronic service user agreement.
The recent passage of Senate Bill 1314 added Section 15-1046 to Arizona Revised Statutes relating to the Student Information System. This particular addition to this policy includes provisions to notify parents of their ability to prohibit their child's usage of the internet. So it has a direct connection to parent notification associated particularly with the students accessing the internet.
Any questions, comments? And right now, for the user agreement, we do a paper form. Is that correct?
I
the
think
beginning
that
of
is
school
correct.
year, we all
Yes, they
sign.
sign. Mhm.
So in simplified language, this is an opt-out policy for technology, for
No.
the internet?
They sign permission.
Okay.
It's when the information can be shared, it doesn't apply for use for daily operations or whatever like that, but it's,
Parents will
covered.
be notified of their ability to prohibit the student from the use of technology while at school.
yeah.
Yeah, so it is an opt-out, right?
Well, at the beginning of the year, we get a form. Every
Right.
parent gets a form. Please sign here if you want your child to use it electronically. If you don't, then check here.
Well, it applies specifically to the internet. Mr. Gay has something to add.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Pallas Thompson. Just to clarify, we do it slightly differently than the SBA standard form. There's an exhibit, and the guidance there just basically says that if the parent doesn't want the student to have access to instructional technology, then they simply don't sign the form. We've taken a little bit more, we believe, clear approach, and on our exhibit that they sign, there's a checkbox at the bottom, and it says, I don't want my student to access the technology. So we know for sure what the intent of the parent is. And so just also to be clear, it's instructional technology. In general, it's heavily focused on the internet because of the obvious concerns some parents might have for that. It does not cover any administrative technology that might be happening in the classroom. It's just for technology that students use.
And administrative is like a smart board, those kinds of things, correct?
Not necessarily, because a smart board can be used certainly in an instructional manner, and students can be asked to go up and interact with the smart board. And so that could certainly include the smart board technology.
So this policy going forward, teachers should be aware if our parents do sign that they do not want to participate, you'd be not in compliance with the law if you do have a child participating and the parent does not want you to.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, moving on. 10.10, first reading, Arizona School Board Association's Policy Advisory Revision to Current Policy, IKAB, report cards and progress reports.
This policy has been modified to place emphasis on each student progress in achieving goals, as stated in the student's Individualized Education Plan, or IEP, for students qualified for services under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. At the latter part of this policy, it has been stated and struck that all children need to meet the general curriculum requirements. It has been added for students who qualify under IDEA that such progress reports, etc., shall be provided as directed in the student's IEP.
This is better.
Ms. Stone?
This is better. I like this one.
Ms. Pingerelli? Ms. Connect? I don't have any comments.
Thank you.
Next, 10.11, first reading, Arizona School Boards Association Policy Advisory Revision to Current Policy IKE, Promotion and Retention of Students.
A student's high school grade classification may be determined by each district, as the definition included in the policy currently is neither in statute nor in the State Board of Education rules. In response to district inquiry, Policy Services has explained that a student promotion to a higher grade at mid-year is permissible and is referenced in Regulation IKE RB. A student may be promoted to more than one grade higher than the present grade. A teacher may promote a student at any time during the academic year. Therefore, a district may determine at the local level the specific procedures to document and standardize a mid-year early promotion action. Policy IKEB acceleration is added as a cross-reference to policy IKE. If you'll note in this particular policy, what is struck is a student's high school grade classification. That is, again, a local determination. In the old policy, it was related to a student was required to achieve X number of credits before being declared a sophomore, a junior, et cetera. Again, that has been struck because that is not in state board policy and is a local decision.
Ms. Connect? Ms. Pingerelli? Ms. Stone? I have no comments. 10.12, first reading, Arizona School Board Association Policy Advisory Revision to Current Policy IKF, Graduation Requirements.
The background is, on this is Policy Advisory number 555. This updates our policy IKF in that it strikes the Ames competency test as a condition for high school graduation.
I would like to highlight that this is, for me, beginning of a conversation. I would like a study session on this one to discuss Peoria Unified's graduation requirements so that it aligns to the skills for our students, to the graduation requirements. So at this point, it's first read and yes.
To be clear, this is the Peoria policy, not the state policy.
That is true.
Right. It might be helpful because so many of these policies are universal from district to district across the state. They're just essentially Arizona policies, especially the ones that are related to state mandates. But this one in particular, is very personalized to our district. It is unique in that our requirements are currently higher than the state standards. And so maybe at the beginning, what this would say, in the Peoria School District, we require, ...
And that's specifically too, because we removed 15-701, it doesn't have the Ames.
Yeah, that would still be out, but.
Yes, that
but I
still
think
happens. Yeah,
Got it?
and we still have a high graduation rate. Ms. Pingrelli? Ms. Stone? That'll be a future study session. Okay, moving on, 10.13. First reading, Arizona School Boards Association Policy Advisory Revision to Current Policy IL Evaluation of Instructional Programs.
ARS 15-708 is a new statute created by the legislature in House Bill 2477 to address requirements of the statewide assessment results in mathematics. Typically, we do receive these prior to the beginning of the school year. There are 3 requirements associated with this data coming back to schools that may sound familiar to you under some of the move on when reading legislation. Number 1, notification to parents regarding whether or not students have met proficiency in grade level assessments, either state or local assessments, in grades 6 through 8. 2, a description of deficiencies associated with students who have not met grade level proficiency in those grades. And 3, math services to support, supplement, or remediate those math deficiencies. There's a sense of planning needed, if you will, much like move on when reading, associated with 6th through 8th grade students who are not meeting math proficiency standards.
Ms. Stone?
maybe.
Pingrelli? Ms. Connect?
Bill, what percentage of our students are taking these assessments online versus on paper still?
Almost all of our assessments, state and local, are online.
Okay. I think this is maybe not even necessary. I mean, I think there are ways that the state should, since the assessments are taken online, it boggles my mind why it takes this long to get the data back to us.
We do get data back, especially from our AZ Merit data, in a much more timely manner now.
Okay. So this may not even be an issue.
Not in terms of the timeline.
Okay.
What is an issue is, for me, in my role, is paying greater attention to students who are not meeting the proficiency in grades 6 through 8 in mathematics, and really developing intervention plans to better support their growth, so that they're able to master state proficiency standards.
Well, absolutely, and so getting that data back in a timely manner is really important. But what I'm getting at is I'm hoping that as we've migrated to online assessments, that this kind of time delay that this policy addresses isn't necessarily an issue.
Correct.
With that being said, results do come back before school's out for AZ Merit. They have traditionally in the past.
We do get preliminary data back, and then they comb through that and check that for accuracy, right at the very end of the school year or beginning of June.
So thinking about that process and looking at this statement, it says assessments results are available before the start of each school year. And I think about students who do, and looking at our results, depending on what assessment, I see red flags of pushing kids through to the next grade level or the next set of standards. If we're getting the data before the school even ends out, we need to be proactive and communicating to parents that your child did not meet 6th grade math. We need to meet pronto.
So that is the first set of data that we currently receive back from the AZ Merit has to do with 3rd grade reading results for that very reason. our system, and it'll be interesting to develop the regulations and exhibits associated with this policy, would need to be responding similarly to getting that data back and taking action associated with supplement or remediation programs during the summer months, and really trying to accelerate that student through that time period, as well as at the onset of the fall semester, not only in course placement, but acceleration through mathematics support programming.
And I would like us to reconsider or re-review our summer programs. I know from experience, they are not beneficial to our students to get them to close that gap, especially if we have this data.
That's correct. A lot of our online, we're meeting about that, looking at some of the resources and online opportunities for middle school and high school. We did try some high school intervention summer school programming this last summer that was, we learned a lot. It was successful in many cases, but we learned a lot. And we need to go back to the drawing board and look at our 6-12 approach for summer school intervention.
And without going further off base, but back to the policy, this policy has some major implications of communication and on being proactive on how we're going to move forward.
Correct.
So. Okay. That was 10.13. So now we're on 10.14. First reading, Arizona School Boards Association Policy Advisory Revision in Current Policy IMD, School Ceremonies and Observances.
The legislature directs in Senate Bill 1289 that ARS 15-717 includes the national motto and the state motto in the listing of copies or excerpts of materials which may be read or posted in any school in the state by a teacher or administrator. The list of approved resources is included as additional options in the new policy IMD.
Ms. Connect, do you have any questions? Ms. Pingrelli? I just want to highlight and bring attention, we get a lot of parents and community members that we don't do Pledge Allegiance. There is a policy that we adhere to, that we do follow, and here's another proof point that we have policy to support those efforts.
As long as you're making comments about it, it's funny, it says that they do the passage from the Declaration of Independence from 4th through 6th grade, but I know that they do it over the announcements, and even the littlest of kids are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets so ingrained in them that when they do it, the Pledge of Allegiance at another venue, they immediately launch into it because they see it as one thing, the Pledge of Allegiance and then the Declaration of Independence, so.
Exactly, great point. And yes, so thank you for bringing this to our attention, and that we do practice that in our school district. All right, moving on, 10.15, last one of the evening, and then we have a few more items. 10.15, first reading, Arizona School Boards Association Policy Advisory Revision to Current Policy LC, Relations with Education Research Agencies.
The legislature passed extensive additions to statutes pertaining to pupil information, specifically addressing surveys, parental permission, and informed consent. House Bill 2088 amended ARS 15-101, 249, and 741. ARS 15-117 was added. This is a new section which describes the mandatory duties of school districts in the areas of surveys, pupil information, parental permission, and informed consent. This section should be read carefully in order to understand the scope and applicability of the statute as it relates to school district employees, students, and parents. The initial requirement in this section is notwithstanding any other law, each school district and charter school shall obtain written informed consent from the parent of a pupil before administering any survey that is retained by a school district or the Department of Education for longer than 1 year, and that solicits personal information about the pupil regarding a number of characteristics which are listed in the statute. In this particular policy, what has been added that you will see in the second paragraph is that each school district shall obtain written informed consent from the parent of a pupil before administering any survey that is retained by the school district or that contains any kind of personal information, personal questions associated with that student.
Ms. Pingrelli?
Why is there just a 1 year? Why isn't it, in terms of, so is there's a 1 year if, let me try to go back through it. So if it's retained for over a year, you have to have permission?
Well, I believe that that's what the policy says. Additionally,
Okay.
it also states that, or if there's any kind of personal information
Okay,
that's asked of the student.
all right. And then, just on a side note, it's not for the policy itself, but I know I have expressed my desire to have research projects presented to the board, just so parents and community know what is going on in the school district, even if it's brief.
No question about that.
Connect? And I don't have any questions about this one either. And I don't see an agenda item to readdress any, but since we're done with board policies, and there was one that Ms. Connect wanted to readdress.
Well, the CPR one. My understanding is, while the law is new, we have been providing CPR training, or the CPR training, right?
That's correct. At
Yeah.
9th grade, we started this last school year.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are done with policies for
Thank you.
today. Thank you. Moving on to 10.16, report and discussion on local, state, and federal legislative issues and activities. I just wanted to highlight before we jump into this one is all these policies were as a result of, or many of them are a result of changes at the state level. So who you choose and how you communicate to your elected officials impacts us locally. And as a result, we are making policy changes because of those decisions. So staying in communication with your elected officials and paying attention on how you stand on items impact Peoria Unified School District. That's all I wanted to say about that. Okay, and Ms. Myers, are you doing, or Ms. Pellis-Thompson, state, local, federal issues?
I have one item, and that has to do with our 8F letter grades that we've received. We're pretty excited. 85% of our schools, similar to last year, 85% are A's and B's. So that's really good news. What was a big shift here that was pretty exciting is that 4 of the 7 high schools are A's.
Phenomenal.
And the rest are B's. RSK moved from a C to a B. So that was pretty exciting. So our high schools are A's and B's. Then 85% of the rest are A's and B's. This is due in great part to our principals and our teachers and, of course, our students, our staff, maintaining where we're going, and we're going to continue moving up.
I appreciate you highlighting that because also CTE is a big part of that, all their contributions.
Absolutely.
Giving our students an opportunity to have more than just an academic. CTE is assessed, and so our kids are being recognized for their hard work in those extracurriculars. So thank you to the CTE department as well. And the fact that all the challenges and insights that we faced last year, we still did pretty darn good. So kudos to all the teachers and staff and everybody all hands on deck. So thank you. All right, that was good.
Always.
Okay, informational reports, 11.1, budget facilities planning construction report. All the information's online.
There.
Excellent. At some point, when we get the reports of all the side-by-side comparisons, looking at those unintended or unexpected costs of kind of situations we deal with, would be interesting to know, and that we can't plan for, that still happen and we have to have money for, so down the line. But I won't say study session. Report on upcoming meetings and events, 11.2. Miss Airy, would you like to highlight?
Thank you, President Seah Martinez, members of the board, Mrs. Pallas Thompson. Just one quick note on something that you'll see up there is upcoming Love Our Schools Day. And as you know, it's a partnership that we have had through School Connect, a great partner of ours, for the last few years. And so that is a day where local businesses and churches flood our campuses on a Saturday morning and offer to do a number of beautification projects around our campuses. And so we certainly appreciate the support from everyone in our community who is willing to lend a hand, and that day should be just a really great day to celebrate great community partnerships. We're looking forward to that on October 27th. Also, I noted the past couple board meetings, our field trip, and I know Mrs. Connect mentioned it as well, but we're filling up pretty quickly for that. So I do want to encourage our governing board members, if you plan to join us on Wednesday, October 24th, please let me know so we can save you a seat on the bus.
Thank you very much. And we are full-fledged into the school year. There are a lot of activities that you can attend. Bus Safety Week, Red Ribbon. Governing board members, I challenge you to choose one in between October and November to attend our employee health fair. I hear great things. The lines are always long, and that means great engagement. So Dr. Davidson and your department, thank you for that. One last thing that's not on here I wanted to highlight. October 21st, there is downtown Phoenix. I am volunteering. It is called Be a Leader. One of our teachers at Peoria High School, she leads it, Miss Averly. I always... Anyway, she is leading a group of students to complete FAFSA. I will be volunteering, helping students complete FAFSA. It's open to everybody. Seniors, families are welcome. It is a Sunday, downtown Phoenix. So parents and seniors who need help with college readiness, FAFSA completion, we will be down there, downtown Phoenix, and we have our students represented in our high school. So that's October 21st on a Sunday. Look up Be a Leader. With that, we are on 12.1, draft agenda for October 25th. We're efficient. Look at that. If you have any questions, it will be amended if anything is needed. 12.2. Request for future agenda governing board items. Ms. Stone? Ms. Pingarelli? Ms. Connect? I have one. I would like to add future agenda item to add and discuss resolutions for financial literacy, safety, and mental wellness. Need a second?
Excuse me, I'll second.
Okay. And that is it. 13.1. Adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
I second that. All in favor say aye. 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 Motion passes. 8:03.